Morgan Stocker. I'm the Director of Student Activities. I don't usually use notes either, but I don't want to mess up titles or what people are talking about. So today we're going to be spending some time discussing issues around bullying and harassment, both here at Gettysburg College and in the world around us. So I wanted to just introduce the three presenters, and then they'll each go, and then I'll introduce the judge closer to the end. So Scott Wojciechowski he's a residential life coordinator. He's gonna introduce our new harassment and bullying policies in the Gettysburg College Code of Conduct, as well as discussing ways of intervening in these types of situations and the importance of and how to report incidences to the Department of Public Safety. And then Lieutenant Neely is gonna present on how DPS responds to these reports and investigates the matters. And then finally, we'll have Judge Glenn Berman, who will be discussing the case he presided over that dealt with the case of cyberbullying. So I'm going to bring Scott up here and let him get started, and then we'll go from there. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Morgan. Similarly, I typically go off book, but I do want to have notes up here this afternoon to talk about a very important policy that is relatively new to Gettysburg College. This past year, the Student Life Committee, which is a group of faculty, administrators, and students worked diligently throughout the fall and spring to work on two new policies for Gettysburg. Those include their main product from the fall, which was our bias policy, then also our policy on harassment, what was the main output of the spring semester. All of this information is available in your student handbook and also online. I'm not going to read every policy verbatim, but I want to give an overarching view of what we have in terms of these policies and how they affect our campus community here at Gettysburg. In one of the pieces in that spring process with the harassment policy was a focus on bullying. Bullying, personal harassment, cyberbullying, again, a large umbrella term for a lot of things and actions we might see on college campuses. And one of the tougher things in terms of the harassment policy, is specifically the personal harassment and bullying, is that not every example of bullying rises to the level of the harassment policy. So we wanted to make sure to include a clause in the policy that would cover a range of examples, some of which were observed on this campus. And it could be in the Cub, or in a fraternity, across campus, name calling, vicious text messages, exclusion from certain locations. And this all, again, bubbled up from things on campus. And when the Student Life Committee started to look for examples of policy, there wasn't a lot of language in higher ed on college campuses. So we took a turn to K through 12 education, where bullying is more, there's a greater awareness, I would say, and also a little bit more policy written about that. Then also specifically to the Tyler Clementi case, which was one of the main pieces of what led to the policy here at Gettysburg. And I want to read specifically the personal harassment and bullying information from the policy. It says, although bullying does not rise to the level of harassment, the college believes that these behaviors are inappropriate and inconsistent with our mission. In addition, these are hurtful behaviors that interfere with the rights of those in our community to live in an environment conducive to learning. Bullying is unwelcome and unreasonable behavior that demeans, offends, or humiliates people, either as individuals or a group. Bullying behavior is often persistent and part of a pattern, but it can also occur as a single incident. It is usually carried out by an individual, but it can also be an aspect of group behavior. Mobbing is a particular type of bullying behavior carried out by a group rather than an individual. Mobbing is the bullying or social isolation of a person through collective, unjustified accusations, humiliation, general harassment, or emotional abuse. Although it is group behavior, specific incidents such as an insult or a practical joke may be carried out by an individual as part of mobbing behavior. And just a few examples of bullying listed in the policy. Performed alone or in a group, these might include but are not limited to name calling, insults, physical gestures, playing harmful or malicious jokes intended to harass, encouraging others to exclude someone socially, spreading rumors or lying that damages someone's social reputation or social acceptance, and lastly, cyberbullying, which includes bullying via social media, email, text, or other forms of electronic communication. And I wanted to read that policy specifically because that is the focus of today's afternoon, the discussion we're all here for, but then also pieces you might not know that fall under the personal harassment or bullying. But one of the main things, and Lieutenant Neely is going to be talking a little bit more about this in terms of what the Department of Public Safety's role is, but you as a member of this college community, as a Gettysburg student, as someone who, we define the norms of what our community accepts and what our community rejects, and the behavior that is appropriate and inappropriate. And it's all of our jobs to maintain the community that is welcoming and conducive to learning. And so with that, there are two things that when you see bullying, or what you might think is bullying, two things you should do. You should intervene. And we talk about bystander behavior. Part of the first year orientation this year was to really focus on bystander attitudes and ways that bystanders can intervene. So this is a brief quiz. Who can briefly give a definition of what a bystander is? Go ahead.
Someone who witnesses the harassment and bullying but is not the subject or the person doing the harassment.
Right. So someone that's maybe on the outside or in the same place but isn't the target or the aggressor in the situation. So does that make sense? Everyone's heard this word before, bystander. So what does it mean to be a bystander who intervenes? Right, yeah.
The person that's on the outside who comes in to stop the bullying, basically.
Right. Exactly, and it's a very simple concept. A lot simple theoretically than when you're in the situation. And sometimes you feel that pit in your stomach in that moment when you should say something. And we encourage you to act on that. We all have strong moral compasses, I would think. You're all students at Gettysburg. So it's the idea of when you have that opportunity, you see something, you feel something that's wrong, it's that opportunity to say something and to intervene. So that's one of the first steps when you see bullying going on or harassment, to try to intervene. Again, if it's safe, safety is a factor there. This isn't going to be a lecture on bystander intervention. There are a lot of opportunities throughout the year that will focus on that. But I do want to kind of set that up for you all, that when you see something, you should say something, whether or not in the moment. But the second part of that, if you choose to intervene, at least you should report any incidents that you observe. And that's kind of your main responsibility. At least you should be reporting things, these behaviors that you feel are harassment or bullying. And there are two main ways I want to share with you and make this aware for everyone in this room. One of the ways is to contact DPS, the Department of Public Safety, either in person on Stevens Street, or to call them over the phone and to submit a report. Or you can also do it online through the report concern form, which is it's a catch-all form for a lot of incidents on campus or any concerns, but it's gettysburg.edu/report concern. Again, you probably have heard this if you're a first-year student or in any orientation over the last few years, or as a student in any case, gettysburg.edu/report concern. And when DPS gets a report, or that report is submitted through the report concern form, this event, the oversight of any harassment cases or bullying cases is then overseen by the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. Jennifer McCary is the director of Student Rights and Responsibilities, and she oversees the case. And we're going to talk in a moment now. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant George Neely to speak more about the investigation procedures and the role that the Department of Public Safety has in following up on a reported case. Are there any questions for me before I turn it over to Lieutenant Neely? Does this make sense? So bystander intervention, intervene, but at least report. What are two ways that you can report bullying or harassment on this campus? That's one. Call DPS. What's the second?
Online.
The online form. gettysburg.edu/report concern. Thanks, folks.
Unlike Scott, I'm old. I do take notes, and I do check them all the time. Scott defined how you do report, and we will investigate anything that comes into the office, whether it be a second party or a third party, as far as harassment or bullying. We certainly are going to address that. Once we receive an harassment or a bullying complaint, our investigation immediately starts to, number one, determine if the harassment or bullying is strictly held to college policy, or through the investigation, we find out that it is now a criminal act. If it is a criminal act, then we're going to call the Gettysburg Police in. Now, ultimately, it will be the complainant's decision on how it goes forward as far as a criminal act. But judicially here, we would run simultaneous investigations, side by side, us doing the judicial portion and the police doing the criminal act. We would share interviews and we would share evidence. We would make sure that we do not, if it is a criminal act, we would make sure we do not interfere with that investigation, because that would be the hierarchy of the complaint. Our role immediately, and I can't emphasize this enough, our role immediately is to stop the occurrence. Our second role is to make sure that it does not occur again, no reoccurrence. And the third one is to evaluate the effect on the victim and the community. And as Scott said, he was very good at putting this out there, that we could have one victim, but it could be one suspect, or it could be a group on campus that is suspect. It could be a whole social group. An example would be one person targeted by a fraternal group on campus. So it can be one-on-one, or it could be one-on-many. Now what I would, just a couple other things, because Scott, he stole a lot of my script here. But we want to make sure that, look, it's a very emotional time for the victim. There is no doubt. It is absolutely emotional. And we all, on those kind of situations, we might not think about facts and details at the time. But what I want to encourage anyone that is a victim, and if you're an associate of or helping that individual, make sure that, number one, that they are careful and to record the details of the harassment as soon as it occurs. We want dates, times, location, witnesses, what was said to the victim, what the victim's response was to the perpetrator. We want to record any attempts that we as a victim have made to tell that bully or the person harassing us that, hey, enough's enough, stop it. Then we want to make sure you keep all letters, gifts, emails, voicemails, texts, wall postings, anything that would give information that would support your particular claim. Okay? Any questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
This all goes under the Clery Act, correct? So you have to report, you have to document it, and then it goes up to the campus and whatnot. I guess I was a little bit confused with Dean.
Okay, you just saw one from the dean.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. That comes under what we call a timely warning. Okay. Anytime we have something that even remotely looks like it's part of the Clery Reporting Act, then it is handled in that manner.
Okay, but not all cases of bullying or harassment are necessarily under the Clery Act?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It just depends on the circumstances and what we find out as we start to talk to people.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else? I thank you.
Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Glenn Berman, Gettysburg College class of 1969. He may not want me to tell you that, but I think that's exciting for you all to be able to connect yourself with an alum of this nature. Following a 17-year career in private practice, Judge Berman served in the Superior Court of Middlesex County from 1989 to 1998, where he presided over matters ranging from, I don't know how you say that word.
Prerogative?
Okay, the extra R confused me. Prerogative writs to capital murder, He was appointed prosecutor for Middlesex County in 1998, appearing before the New Jersey Supreme Court and trying numerous jury cases during his tenure. In 2002, he returned to the Middlesex County bench, serving as the presiding judge of the family part from 2003 to 2008. Prior to his retirement on January 1st, 2013, Judge Berman served as one of 2 judges assigned to the Chancery Part General Equity, where he presided over probate, foreclosure, and complex commercial disputes. During this time, he was also designated as acting criminal part presiding judge and as acting assignment judge. Judge Berman has authored published decisions encompassing all 4 divisions of the Superior Court: general equity, family, civil, and criminal. He was specially designated to preside over New Jersey's 2012 landmark cyberbullying case, State versus Darun Ravi. Glenn is currently practicing law for a private firm and focuses his practice in mediation, arbitration, and discovery management of complex family, commercial, estate probate, and general equity matters, as well as law enforcement investigations. Please welcome Glenn Berman.
I have a commercial announcement. I'm a Civil War nut, not when I was here, but since I left. So if Professor, his pronounced Gelzo, is in hearing distance, and you have time, you go to read his book. I probably read 200 books on Civil War, Lincoln, and Gettysburg, and his is the most recent, and it is good. As I said to Morgan about a half hour ago, you may be the only college students in the country, think about this, who are studying on hallowed ground. And that's really got to be something unique, which I never appreciated until after I left, but probably because I didn't have time. Now, having said that, a few observations. You heard the case you mentioned, State of New Jersey versus Darun Ravi. If you don't remember or hadn't heard of it, I'll give it to you simple. They were roommates. One night, Tyler asked for the room. Tyler was gay. He invited over a gentleman he met on I guess the word is a gay online website. He asked for the room. These are all facts not disputable. Darun Ravi said sure. Then he set up his webcam to view what they would be doing from the room across the hall, who happened to be, I say girl, I hope this is okay, a girl he coincidentally went to high school with, so he knew her. And coincidentally, there was actually 2 incidents, and one of them I think was like the anniversary, I think, is today. I think it took place September 19th and 21st, I believe, in 2010. Now, you know, when I went to Gettysburg, this couldn't have happened. Why? Well, as I told, again, sorry, Professor, during my class, when I lived in Rice Hall, and then Stein, and then in my fraternity, there was one phone in the whole dorm. It was a payphone. No one had a phone in the room. Cell phones weren't invented. No one had an iPad or a computer. And you wanted to, and here's what happened. The phone would ring, people alternated who would answer it, and you get maybe a message like up to 3. Berman, phone call on 1. I mean, that's how you got your calls. If you want to make one, you stood in line for that phone, or you found a payphone someplace else. But that's how you did it. So maybe this couldn't have happened. With technology, with advances in technology, I'll call it comes the opportunity to do some things that are, I'll call it insensitive. That's what happened. Now, when my father and mother dropped me off here, that would have been now in September of '65. Because you start 4 years before you graduate, right? I remember my father saying something to me. That's how my mother's hearing. He said, "You're only young once. Don't be too good." Now, I'm not sure exactly what he meant, but I know what he didn't mean. He didn't mean having fun at someone else's expense. Now, I was on an English major here, so I'm quoting Shakespeare, but I may have the wrong person. I heard once the Shakespearean distinction between tragedy and comedy. Anyone know what it is? In 3 words?
Somebody dies.
Pardon me?
Somebody dies.
No, it's not what I'm thinking, but you're warm. The 3-word distinction between tragedy and comedy in 3 words, but that's close. Not the 3 words I'm thinking of, but it's good enough.
How would it end?
Again, that's an unfair question, because I got the 3 words in my mind, I'm not gonna change the answer. Okay, let me answer my own question, unless anyone else wants to take a stab at it. Point of view. You've all been to a circus, or seen one, and in every circus in the beginning, the clown comes out, and he slips on a banana peel, and the place is hysterical. The clown's not laughing. The point of the story is that you're only young once, and while you're in college, you should be enjoying yourself, as I said, as long as it's at no one else's expense. Now, I'll talk about Robbie briefly. The reason that got so much attention, and I never realized it was worldwide, frankly, because I was oblivious to it. I'm not reading the papers or watching TV. But I have a cousin who said it's getting worldwide attention because he said to me, he said, Robbie's not on trial. Our way of life is. This, as I mentioned to, again, my class, I've got a friend who flies for United internationally. He watched the trial in London. If he was in Australia, he'd read it in the papers. One day, the New York Times did something on the case, and someone was quoted, got a call from someone in Japan the same day. Because I was oblivious to it, but that's why I got so much attention, because our way of life was on trial. Now, if you take anything from this, I'll tell you a couple of things to take from it. The day that trial started, Julia McClure, the lead prosecutor, stood up and said this. She said, what Darun Ravi did was malicious, it was despicable, and it was criminal. Because he invaded someone's privacy at the time you should never do it. When someone is in the act of intimacy. Then the defense attorney stands up, gives his opening statement, Steve Alden. And this was, I guess it was last March. And Steve says, ladies and gentlemen, my client's not malicious, he's not despicable, he's not criminal. He's 3 weeks into college, they were freshmen. He's barely 18, so he's barely a majority. He said, maybe it was stupid, maybe it was prankish, but it's anything but a crime. He doesn't hate anybody. So the answer is, when you hear those 2 statements, who's right? And I'll answer that question too. It conflates. They're probably both partially right. So the lesson I share with you is that conduct that may just seem to be stupid, or to be a joke, or to be prankish, or insensitive, can also be against the law. This is, I deal with educators on a fairly wide basis. I say to them, a college or a high school is not a crime-free zone. Just because you can deal with it in a disciplinary matter doesn't mean it can't be dealt with elsewhere. And I'll leave you with one other thought, and then I'll take any questions. Because I already bored my pre-law people for 2.5 years, 2.5 hours. And I'll be happy to take your questions. I'll tell you the last thing I said to Darun Ravi, because I haven't seen him since the day I sentenced him. In New Jersey, we have a statute, which most states probably have. It's an expungement statute. Expungement defines itself. It means that you can expunge a record, a criminal record. Comes off it, wipes it clean. Not all offenses are expungible, like you can't expunge a murder conviction. But I said to him this. I said, down the road, you would expunge your conviction. But you'll never be able to expunge the pain you caused. And having said that, if you have questions, I'd be happy to take them. Any questions? No? Okay. I'm sorry, sir?
What do you think that, because this case is so involved with technology, do you think that as people younger and younger get involved with technology, these kind of privacy concerns become more prevalent, just in general, or they become more serious? Because I I've been in encounters where much younger people than myself are getting into arguments online, and what normally is just a little conflict escalates because everything that's happened is recorded.
He asked me a two-part question. He said, more prevalent, more serious. More serious, I'm not sure. More prevalent, sure. Because with every invention, unfortunately, comes an issue. Look, 100 years ago, they invented a car. Okay, great. Who goes without one? And now we have drunken driving. I think Alfred Nobel, Nobel Peace Prize, etc. I think he invented dynamite with TNT. I mean, am I right? I mean, okay. He did it for peaceful measures, but we see some bombers using it in Afghanistan. Will it become more prevalent? Unfortunately, it probably will. And here's the thing that I mentioned to the class, what people don't realize, and the press reported it. It may sound like something prankish and stupid, and I didn't call him stupid, you know, it's that. I never called him stupid. I may call behavior stupid, but never the person. Like my ex-wife and I'm divorced, had a little dispute once. She called my son bad. I said, Grace, never call him bad. She said he did a bad thing. But that conduct that he was involved in exposed him to well over a 10-year state prison term. Now, he didn't get that, because I think it was warranted. But, and here's the problem. Let me tell you the consequences of this gentleman, Mr. Robbie. He was asked to leave school, which he did. Cost his family a fortune in legal fees. Ends up with a criminal conviction and other sanctions I imposed. Now, I ask you, if he applies to Gettysburg College, and they say, why did you leave Rutgers? That's going to follow him around like a tail. Someone said to me that he became the poster boy for cyberbullying. Someone said to me he would have changed his name. I'm not telling him to do anything. I'm not his father, I'm not his mother, I'm not him. And I'm not giving him advice because he wouldn't want it from me, and I'm not giving it out. But all I'm saying is, that's why I said, something like that doesn't go away as quickly as you might think. So, all I can say is that will become more prevalent. It could, unless people learn from it. More serious? Hopefully not.
I'll just admit that I didn't follow the trial because I didn't know about it at the time. But during the proceedings and whatnot, did any like motivation or stuff come out so that we can like learn from this and kind of like put more preventative measures in? I mean, I know that you can't control everything, you can't control every environment, but you know, there might be like, as we were talking about, there are patterns and
That's a great question. I'll tell you the only way I can answer it. I talk to the media now because I'm off the bench. Back then I couldn't. So I've gotten friendly with one of the reporters, and by the way, there's a ton. The day of the verdict, we had over 70 media reps from all over. I mean, there were a couple there from London. And one media guy said this to me about 6 weeks ago. He says, he still calls me Judge. He said, Judge, I want to tell you something. This would never have happened if Powder Clemente was a 250-pound linebacker at Rutgers. You know, we live in the most uncivilized, civilized society in the world. He would have been afraid because then he might have had things settled the way guys settle things sometimes. Listen, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what drives human behavior. All I can make of it is a couple things. The room did it because he could, and maybe he was just curious. He may have done it because if Tyler brought a woman back to the room, and that would have been just as criminal, but in a different light. So the answer is, I can't tell you why he did it. I can't tell you what drove it. All I'm saying to you is that you don't do something because you can. I read something once by someone, when I was on the bench, I read a quote, and judges have a lot of power. And someone said to me once, power is respected most the less it's imposed. I hope I answered your question in a long way.
yes, absolutely.
When you're working on such sensitive cases, such as this with the suicide, how do you work on separating kind of like your own moral emotions versus like logical analysis of the sentencing?
Well, hope this comes out right. Believe it or not, that to me was not tough. And I'll tell you why. The very nature of your job is to, I used to tell lawyers, I don't make law, I discharge it. And I used to have, I'm sort of responding obliquely, when I was county prosecutor and we had a death penalty, there were a couple of prosecutors who wouldn't prosecute those cases. This, for religious reasons, they're morally opposed to the death penalty. And I say, fine, but I want to tell you something. You're violating your oath. Because your oath is to follow the law, not just the ones you don't like, but not just the ones you like. So the answer is, for me, I don't think that was that difficult because I have a lot of faults, that's for sure. But I think about the ability to compartmentalize things on my mind and recognize that I'm not trying the case, I'm not prosecuting it, I'm not defending it. My job, as I mentioned in class, was to keep the playing field level. So do I have views on it? Sure I get views on it. One question I get asked all the time is, what do you think of the jury's verdict? And I have a standard answer. I'll say, I'm not telling you. I said, I think it was logical, I mentioned that. I understand it, but if I was in a jury room, maybe it would have been different, maybe not. But I tell you one thing I believe in. When you have 12 individuals go into a jury room, I will tell you I genuinely believe that they come out with a comprehensible result. I didn't say it was always right, it's comprehensible. So the answer is when I focus on a case, I literally have in front of me the charges, and then the toughest task is deciding which evidence I'll allow in on those charges, which I won't. That is the tough job. For example, maybe one example. It's actually a very good example, and thank God it didn't come up. Suppose the defendant did this before with someone else. The state would want to use that evidence to show that he knew what he was doing, and it wasn't prankish. The defense would want to exclude it, saying he's not charged with it, and it would prejudice the jury. There's where the tough questions come in. So, in answer to yours, for me at least, I don't think that was the toughest part of the case. The toughest part was dealing with the evidence and instructing the jury how to apply the law to the facts, because in New Jersey at least, this was the first case ever tried under this bias statute. That was the tough part, and that was tough. Because when you're trying a case where a statute's never been invoked, you have no help. You can't look to other judges, other cases, and say this is how it was done. So, by the way, the case on appeal now, we'll see if I got it right. Any other questions? Go ahead. Maddie, right?
I'm not sure if this is an answer you can disclose or anything, but in hindsight, how do you feel about how the case turned out and the punishment that was?
Well, I mentioned to a couple of people, I mentioned this to Morgan about a half hour ago. I got stacks of mail and emails. Depends who you talk to. Now, I'll give you one example, and feel free to laugh. I got a letter from a guy who signed his name, and he writes in a letter, if I win the lottery, I'm going to buy a village and make you the village idiot. Okay. I got it the same day, and it said this. It said, basically, I never wanted my son to be a lawyer, ever. But Tay's in law school. Hope he grows up like you. So, I mean, I got letters that were like that. And see, here's the misimpression most people have. And this is what I think drove a lot of this mail. By the way, I think the punishment that I meted out, as I said before, I think was fair. I'm not sure it's perfect, but I think it was fair. Here's the misimpression most people have. Darun Ravi set up the webcam and spied on him, disclosed it, and tried to do it a second time. Then he covered it up. People forget there were 7 cover-up charges. Deleting emails, altering texts and tweets. Oh, by the way, emails don't go away. If I email you and we delete it, it's not deleted. This doesn't go from me to you. It goes from me to my server, to your server to you. But here's what people forget. Tyler Clementi committed suicide within a day or two after that second incident. But the Arun Ravi, and it's important, was never charged with either causing or contributing to his death. And I don't think most people know that. And that's why I got some letters from people saying, I should hang him, I should deport him. But you know, if you're a judge, you only sentence someone for something you're convicted of, not for something they're not even charged with. So that's a good question. It goes back to the question you asked me. Separate your personal feelings. Did he contribute to his death? Well, you can't say he didn't, but who knows what's going on in someone's mind when they take their own life? Go ahead.
Can you clarify what the charges were exactly?
Yes, that's easy. There's 15 count indictment. Counts 1, 3, 5, and 7 count. 1 and 3 were count 1 was invasion of privacy. Count 3 was disclosure, dissemination. Count 5 was attempted invasion of privacy. It's 2 incidents. 1, 3, 5. 1 invasion, 2 disclosure, 5 attempted invasion, 7 attempted disclosure. Counts 2, 4, 6, and 8 were dovetailing 1, 3, 5, and 7. Said those were based upon bias. Counts 9, 10, and 11 were hindering apprehension, and counts 12 to 15 were forms of witness tampering and evidence tampering. And he was convicted of all of them. So, as I said to my group before, I got 2 gifts from God. The world's best memory and the world's worst personality. Hopefully don't buy the second one too much. You have a question?
Yeah, I didn't really follow the case that much, but what exactly was like his sentencing?
What was he what?
What was he sentenced with? And did they ever try to say that he kind of like had did they ever try to charge him with attributing to the kid's death?
No, never.
Okay.
His sentence was this: 3 years probation, 300 hours community service. I made him pay $10,000 to a fund for victims of bias crimes. Made him be counseling, I'll put sensitivity, and 30 days in jail. And you get out in 20 on good behavior. That was the sentence. Now, was it perfect? I don't know. If I gave 30 of you a piece of paper to fashion a sentence, I might get 20 different answers, and it'll all be right. Was 300 hours community service right? I don't know. I did it for a reason. Because the other person got 300, who had a deal. The woman in the room who allowed her computer to get used. Because I made a comment. I said, consistency breeds fairness. She got 300. I gave him 300. I gave him a jail term. She didn't get it, but his conduct was much more involved and much more extensive. So that's why I started with that equation of the probation, community service, and then expanded, because I thought it was deserved. And by the way, interesting, even though it's on appeal, he served the jail term. He voluntarily served it. So he must have thought it was fair. I'm sure he didn't like it, but I mean, he liked no time, but he elected to serve it already.
Do you know how the Rutgers campus dealt with the situation?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how the Rutgers campus dealt with the situation and how it came to light?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. To the best as I can reconstruct it, but I know Rutgers, I guess they must have asked Molly Way, she was the woman across the hall. I suppose they asked them both to leave campus or withdraw, and they both did. I think it came to light this way. Tyler's missing. He jumps off the George Washington Bridge, and then they start. Sorry, am I upsetting you?
No,
Okay, but she but she asked the questions. I'm responding. I guess from there they decided to do a search of maybe look in his room for why, like what if he left a suicide note, if anything's left behind. So he did a search of his room, and these things go on. These things go on. You can connect the dots. By the way, I didn't say there was a suicide note. I said they looked to see if there was one. Because if there was, I won't answer that question. Because after the room was sealed, let's just say that whatever was taken of Tyler's personally, I would not allow it to be disclosed publicly. So, let's just say, I know what they took, but as I seal the record, I'm not talking. Like any more than I can talk about the gentleman's name. The gentleman who was brought in, the gentleman who Tyler invited back to his room is known by his initials, MB. The reason for that is because in New Jersey, invasion of privacy is considered a sex offense. And in New Jersey, if you're the victim of a sex offense, alleged or proven, your name is not disclosed. So I'll never tell you MB's name. At least if I did, I'd violate the law, so I won't do that. And
I have a three-part question. Were MB, the girl across the hall, and Tyler's family involved in the trial at all?
were they?
Yes.
I don't know if MB's family was involved because the only day I ever saw him was they came in and testified. So if he has family, if he does, he does. I don't know if they were there because I wouldn't recognize them.
Tyler's family?
Tyler's family, from what I can recall, was there every day. Tyler had a mother, father, two brothers. My recollection is, and the reason I'm hedging is because I'm not focused on who's in the audience. Because literally, it was packed every day, and some days standing room only. In fact, to tell you how packed it was. And I tell my sheriff's officers, don't ask people to leave, because if you do, we'll have a problem. My secretary came down to watch one day, and she's standing in the back. She couldn't see me. Now, I know I'm short, but I'm on a bench, I'm elevated. She couldn't see me. Because I guess there's 4 people deep. So the issue is, I don't know about MB. From what I can recall, Tyler's mother, father, and 2 brothers were there, I think, virtually every day. From what I recall, Darun Ravi's mother and father, I think, were there every day. Because again, I wasn't really focused on that, but you asked me, you said, so Tyler,
The
MB?
girl across the hall?
Oh, I don't know.
Was she there? Was
The only
she-
day I ever saw her was the day she testified. But again, like who's in the audience, truthfully, I just wasn't focused on because I wanted to, like I was ignoring the cameras too. If you ever saw me on the bench, my chair was always tilted. I'm looking right where you're sitting, Lieutenant, right? Lieutenant Neely? Where the witness would always be by me, and the jury's on that side, so I'm always looking at the witness and the jury. So I didn't really pay that much attention to who's there and who's not, but the answer is, that's the way I recall it, that Tyler's parents, his 2 brothers were there, I think, every day. MB, I have no idea. Molly Way, I saw her once when she testified, so I would recognize her parents. And Darun Ravi, I think his parents were there every day. That's the best I can recall. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Because, you know, because I'll tell you something, someone asked me this. You know, cameras could be distracting. They weren't to me, because I told, it's now called In Session, back then it was Court TV. They came to me to film the case. And I said to them, you could film it if you live with my conditions. One of them is, you know, they gotta be silent, you know, like, I think they were voice activated. One was manual, one was voice activated. You gotta put them where I say, and it can't distract anybody, jurors, witnesses, me, or lawyers, because I don't wanna be distracted. So I tried to ignore, I mean, I knew they were there, but I really tried to ignore everything except what I'm listening to, which is the testimony. Because I knew one thing, if I make a mistake, it's going viral. I don't want my daughter in California looking at the internet and saying her father made a mistake. So the one question I'm asked is, did I feel a lot of pressure? He said, no, not really. I mean, it's my job. I think I was trained for it. I think I'm good at it. But I said to myself, just preside like it's like any other case you ever had. Difference is, a lot of people watching. I mean, that's my mindset. Hope it doesn't sound overly simplistic, but that's my mindset.
Is it hard to avoid being biased in a case like this that receives so much national and international media coverage?
You know, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. And I don't want to sound, you know, overly simplistic or this, but that's your job. I mean, you know, I take oaths seriously. You take an oath, and the last words of that oath are to be fair, impartial, and just. If you can't do that, then you shouldn't do the work. Do something else. And the bottom line is, and here's what I learned a long time ago, I've never forgotten. Before you become a judge in New Jersey, you get vetted by the Bar Association, Governor's Council, Legislature. And one person told me this once, I'll never forget it. A friend of mine. He was vetting me. That happened to be his position at the time. He wasn't good friends then, but we knew each other. He said, Glenn, remember one thing. He told me this in 1988. He said, if you make a mistake, someone will get hurt. My father always told me to pay for my own mistakes. But if you're a judge, you make a mistake, someone else will get hurt. And that's really wrong. If I make a mistake, pay for my own, okay. So the answer is, do I think it was, no. I mean, again, if you can't be fair to people on both sides, then do something else. If you have biases, and everyone does in some respect, pocket them and put them away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. By the way, I do make mistakes. But as I said to I get my group, not driven out of bias, maybe I tend to overthink things. But the answer is, I think if you have biases, then you have to learn how to, and if you have any biases at all, then you shouldn't even be a judge. Think about it. Because if you're not fair to your core, then you shouldn't be in that position. Anything else? You've been quiet.
Was there any backlash in the verdict, and if there was, did it affect you?
I don't know if there's backlash toward the prosecutor's office or the defense. I don't know that, because I wouldn't be privy to that. I think the prosecutor's office got some backlash because they felt that he shouldn't have been prosecuted to that extent. Let me give you a hypothetical. Would we be talking right now if Tyler Clementi didn't take his own life? That's rhetorical. Would Rutgers have dealt with it internally? The prosecutor would tell you, we'd have brought the charges anyway. I can't answer that question. The prosecutor's office, I think, got backlash because people felt they were prosecuting Darun Ravi too zealously. Defense got backlash because they felt that they weren't taking it seriously, or depicting it as something just that, quote, kids do. Did I get backlash? Yeah, I got some nasty letters. I got one letter that was, it was like I called a very meek threat. I didn't take it seriously. I got some ugly emails. So, you know, the bottom line is, and Morgan mentions to me when we talked before, no matter what I did, I could use a bad word, but I'm not going to use the word in front of the ladies. The night before the sentence, my best friend, I was in kindergarten, called me on the phone. He says, I'm not asking what you do tomorrow, but good luck. I said, there's two things you can take to the bank. I'll be fair, and I'll catch some SH, fill in the last two letters. Because no matter what I did, I was going to get criticized. And you know something? It is what it is. Between conviction and sentence, I had 2 months to think about it. If there was a perfect sentence, a perfect resolution, in 2 months, I would have found it. But there wasn't. As I said, to some people, Darun Ravi is the poster boy for cyberbullying, who should be deported. As some people wrote to me to tell me to do that, actually, after conviction. And some people said, this is ridiculous. Why are we wasting taxpayers' money on something like this? So the only backlash I got was some ugly mail, hard mail and emails. And my secretary probably protected me from the phone calls. If she got an ugly phone call, she probably wouldn't tell me. I answer your question? But no one overtly ever threatened me. Go ahead.
You said earlier that the case wasn't only Darun Ravi on trial, it was our society.
Well, my cousin said to me, he said, you know, our way of life's on trial, because this is the way we communicate. You know, it's amazing. I've been in restaurants where I've seen 4 people texting each other? Why can't they just talk to each other across the table? I mean, I didn't see our way of life was on trial. I wasn't thinking of those terms. I was thinking about the case. You know, present your evidence, the jury will decide, and I'll keep the playing field level. But I think what drove the publicity was a couple things. The suicide, the unique nature of the alleged crime, you know, how it was done, and you know the media. Bad news makes news. If I write a check to the American Cancer Society for $10,000, no one's going to write about it. But if I rob them, I'll be on the front page. I mean, bad news makes news. The press writes crime. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. People read it, so they must feel it sells. So, like I said, truthfully, I was surprised by the amount of the media that were there. When I saw it come out one day and I found people from London there, I mean, I was surprised. Because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's Tyler Clementi, MB, and Darun Ravi. And the day of the verdict, there were over 70 media people there from like all over. So, I've had murder cases with no people, hardly anyone in the courtroom, but I guess that's the only answer I could come up with. What my cousin said is her way of life. So, I don't know.